All right, so we collected information about Lucy from the first two chapters of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. We've collected information about Alice from chapter 1 of Alice in Wonderland called Down the Rabbit Hole. And now we're ready to write our essay. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the prompt, what we're being prompted to do. And that is here. It says, analyze and describe the similarities and differences between Lucy from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and Alice from Down the Rabbit Hole. Use evidence from the text to support your claims. Now, you probably would not have these two words together, analyze and describe, and I use them for a reason. Because oftentimes when students have a prompt, they are told to analyze, describe, identify, and students sometimes shut down because even if they know what these words mean, they're not quite sure what they're being asked or told to do. They're not sure, what does that mean, describe? I know if I said describe someone to me, well, what would you do? You would tell me about them. Well, that's what this is asking you to do. If it says analyze and describe, they want you, the person who's going to write the essay, to tell about this particular thing. So if I'm told to analyze a theme, then I need to tell about that theme. If I'm told to describe a certain part of a story, then I need to tell about that story. We're being asked to analyze and describe Lucy and Alice. So we need to tell our readers about these two characters, and we specifically want to look at how they're alike and at how they are different. And we have our chart, so we're ready to do that. So the first thing we're going to do is, and all we're going to focus on in this particular video is writing the introduction paragraph, the first paragraph of our essay. Now, there's different parts of an essay, and in the introduction, there are different parts of an introduction. The last sentence in your introduction needs to be your thesis. Your thesis is the main idea. What is this essay about? And it is the most important part of your essay. So that's why when I'm teaching students, the main thing I want you to figure out first is your thesis. There are other parts of an introduction that make your essay stick out, and it makes your essay really, really good. And it's one of those things that kind of gives you the little extra points. If you're taking the leap, it might give you some extra points with the person grading it. If you're writing an essay for a teacher, it might give you extra points for really showing how great of a student you are. But the most important thing is the thesis. And I advise students to learn how to write a thesis first. That's what this essay is going to be about. And I advise using the prompt to write it. And so I'm going to demonstrate that now. Okay, so analyze and describe the similarities and differences between Lucy from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and Alice from Down the Rabbit Hole. Okay. I know from reading this that my essay is supposed to be about what the two characters have in common and how they're different. That's what this essay is going to be about. A thesis is merely what the essay is going to be about. What is it I'm about to read? And if you can figure that out first, then you're set for the rest of the essay. So even though the thesis is the last sentence in an introduction, then it is the most important thing. I suggest you write that first and then figure out what else you want to put in your introduction. If this is a timed writing, I always tell students, skip a few lines from the top of the page, write your thesis, write your essay, and then go back and fill in the introduction. That's what I advise students to do, because the most important part is the thesis. If you don't have the other stuff, maybe you'll miss some points, maybe you won't. But the thesis is the most important part. And that's why I always suggest doing it first. And since I know I'm typing, so I can put my cursor and add stuff later. But even if you're handwriting, I always say skip a few lines, write that thesis out, write your essay, and then go put the other information above that. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, so what's my essay going to be about? It's going to be showing that there are similarities and differences between these two. So I want to maybe change the language up a little bit. So I'm going to say, this essay will look at ways Lucy and Alice are alike and how they are different from one another. I'm going to edit this little. Okay, this essay will look at some important ways Lucy and Alice are alike, as well as some ways they are different. I'm going to take from one another out. No, I'm going to leave it in. Okay. So I have this essay will look at some important ways Lucy and Alice are alike, as well as some ways they are different from one another. Okay, just to show you that there's no completely right way to do this. There are wrong ways, but there's no completely right way. Let's go ahead. I'm going to write another thesis, and I'm going to say the same thing, but with different words. This essay will show the similarities and differences between Lucy and Alice. Okay, do you see how I'm saying the same thing but with different words? But the most important thing, I got what I'm trying to do. I got my idea of what I'm writing about from the prompt. We can even do it again. Okay, so I'm looking at the prompt. Analyze and describe the similarities and differences between Lucy from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and Alice from Down the Rabbit Hole. Use evidence from the text to support your claims. I could say, there are some similarities and some differences between these two characters, Lucy and Alice. Now, I don't like all three of these the same. Some of these I like more than others. But the point is, I got all of these from just reading the prompt. And now by looking at these, and this is what's important, a thesis is what my essay is about. I can read that and know, okay, this essay is going to be about what? How Alice and Lucy are alike and how Alice and Lucy are different. And that's all a thesis is. Some people are thrown by the word, I think. They're not used to, like, what's a thesis? A thesis is just what that essay is about. And it's normally the last sentence in your introduction paragraph. It's the big idea of your essay. Now, we're going to go back and write the other parts of the introduction, and that's going to be it for this particular video. But the thesis is most important. And that's why I always tell students, if the other part is stressing you out, get your thesis down and write your essay. That's the most important thing, especially at the beginning of the school year. And then you work on the other parts. So I'm about to show you some of the other parts of an introductory paragraph that I think make an essay really stand out. But if you don't catch all of them the first time you write an essay, that's okay. The most important thing is to be able to write your thesis and then the rest of your essay. And then you have time to work on these things. I have students who never get all the parts of an introduction down until the month of May. I have students who get it down in September. I have students who get it down in November. But I have students who it takes the whole year and then all of a sudden they just get it. And it's one of those things, it's just the practice. And that's the point of this. Okay, so I'm going to, I like my first one the most, so I'm going to let these go. So this is going to be my thesis. All right, so I have this little thing for writing an introduction. We already did our thesis. Remember, it says thesis. This is the most important part of an essay. Well, we already did our thesis, so we're going to do the other parts first. So the first thing I recommend to students is that they have a lead. Begin your essay with a life lesson, some general idea or theme from the piece of literature you are writing about, or you can use a quote. Okay, so we're writing about these two stories. And so what I would ask students to do, because some students have been taught that you lead in by like introducing yourself to the readers. They'll say things like, hi, my name's Tom, and I'm going to write about Christopher Columbus. Or they might say, have you ever wanted to know about The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe? Well, my name's Tom, and I'm going to tell you something like that. I don't like that because we are middle school students. And as students, we're professionals. We are supposed to write at a certain academic level. And there's personal writing, and you can be really creative with that. You can be creative with academic writing too, but we still want to be professional about it. And so I always say, think about what you're writing about, think about the stories or the ideas, and bring some idea out. So I would go back and I'd look at my chart. Alice and Lucy, we're going to write about how they're both curious and they're adventurous. Well, what happens in the story? Their being curious leads to their adventures. So I might start off with some kind of sentence about that. If lead throws you and you're like, I don't get it, that's okay. Lead is one of those things that students get it when they do. And like I said, sometimes it's the whole school year before all of a sudden they start kind of coming up with them. The idea is to practice with them. Okay? So, and even notice I put this, if you struggle with coming up with a life lesson, that's okay. All right, so my idea, I'm going to start here. First thing, by the way, is to indent that you can, if you, I always tell students when you're writing, and I think this is taught in other grades. For some reason, when students come to me, a lot of them don't indent, or if they do it like halfway through the page. If you're handwriting, take your thumb, put it at the beginning of the line, and then start writing. And that's how you indent. And you only do it in the first sentence of each paragraph. If you're typing, I know for fifth graders, this will be a lot of your guys' first time actually using a computer to type a lot of your essays and to do a lot of your work. Just hit the tab button, T-A-B, or hit the space bar 4 times, and it's the same thing. Okay? So tab. And I'm going to write about curiosity and adventures. So sometimes being curious leads to an unexpected adventure. My fonts don't look like they're matching up. We want it to be the same, so let's make it 14. All right. So I have sometimes being curious leads to an unexpected adventure. All right, that's just a little life lesson. It doesn't really do anything. Okay, what's the next thing I need to do? Title, author, and gist. All right, guys, the next part we're going to do, title, author, and gist. That's something that you should be learning to do immediately. If the lead in the life lesson or something you struggle with, that's okay. But title, author, and gist is really important because you need to introduce your reader or readers to whatever text you've read and what those stories are about, because maybe the person who's reading it has never read your book. Students often in my class, and I think in a lot of ELA classes, are expected to read a book on their own that has nothing to do with what the teacher is reading with the class. And oftentimes they're expected to write about those things. Well, if I have 30 students in my class, I may have read the book that they're reading, but I may not have. And before they write about the character, I want to know what the book's about. And that's what we call the gist. You need to introduce the text or text, if it's multiple ones like it is today, to your reader and give them a quick gist. What's the story about as applies to whatever you're writing about? Okay, so let's demonstrate that now. All right. Sometimes being curious leads to an unexpected adventure. That's the case for Lucy in C.S. Lewis's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Trying to get that. Not doing it. All right. And for Alice in Lewis Carroll's, and I'm gonna just do the chapter title, Down the Rabbit Hole. All right, I put the author's names first, and then the title. That's just something I do. But you could have said The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. Okay, so I've introduced my characters, but the main thing is I've introduced the text, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and Down the Rabbit Hole. Now, what I want to do is I want to do a quick gist. So real quick, a gist. A gist is just a quick summary of the novel or story you are writing about, because your readers may not have read it. Okay, so now we're going to do that. So, and this is one thing I like, that you can use the author's last name. Lewis's work tells about a group of siblings who enter a magical, I was going to say kingdom, a magical world through a wardrobe in the home where they are staying. Lucy is the first to travel to this world of Narnia, where she meets Mr. Tumnus, a kindly fawn. In Carol's work, Alice travels to a magical world. I think it's called maybe the Wonderland. Travels to a wonderland when she follows a talking rabbit and falls down a magical rabbit hole. They don't like that. You'll give me a suggestion. That's true. That's better. All right. And now, ta-da, we have an introduction. Okay. This right here, this is my lead. I'm going to put this in green because I'm going to go ahead and bold this. I have this in green because this is something that if you can do, great, but if you struggle with it, that's okay. All right, then I'm going to have the titles and the authors right here. Blue, this is very necessary. You need to introduce the works that you're writing about. Then I'm going to have my gist, my little quick summaries. I'm going to put those in a different form of blue because those are necessary to tell the reader about the story. And then last but not least, I'm going to put this in nice big red because I want you to understand this is the most important part. We'll even make this, I'm going to make this italics. This is the most important part of the essay, is the thesis. Now, if this is just throwing you completely, and you're like your eyes are big, you're like, oh my gosh, what? Then what I'm going to show you is a trick to write your thesis and have your title and all the information from the prompt, and then move on. If you're in a this is really important if you're like being timed. Like maybe your teacher says, okay, you have 45 minutes to write this. And you're just like, all these parts of an introduction. What? The most important thing is to get your thesis down. So I'm going to show you to do that using the prompt right now. So just say, I'm going to want to use this later, so I'm going to copy it. Just say you don't have a lot of time. Let's go back to black. Let's undo the bold. Okay. We know that we're going to write about how the characters are like and how they're different. You can just indent and say, Lucy from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and Alice from Down the Rabbit Hole. Are alike in some ways and different in others. This has the text. This from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Down the Rabbit Hole. It has my characters, and it says what this essay is going to be about. And I got this all from the prompt. Now, you might say, well, why did you show us the other way? Is the other way more correct? The other way is the best way. It's a full paragraph that's introducing your readers to what you're going to be writing about. But the thesis is the most important. So the reason I showed you both ways is I have students who they see what the best looks like and they are ready to go for it. I have others who say, I'm overwhelmed. The most important thing is to have that thesis. What is my essay going to be about? Where did I come up with this? I used the prompt. And that tells me what I'm supposed to write about. The goal is for all of us to grow to where we write a beautiful introductory paragraph before we have the rest of our essay. But starting out, the most important thing is that thesis. So I'm going to stop there for today. If there's something you didn't understand, if I overwhelmed you, go back and watch it again. Maybe it takes 2 times. A complex text means going back to the text. This idea that I understand that writing essays for a lot of people, that just overwhelms them. I've written essays and showed them to parents, and parents say, oh my goodness, are my kids supposed to do this? I understand that it can be overwhelming. The idea is to go in these steps and go back and review those steps. And we have a whole year in which to get ourselves ready for this skill. And once you learn this, then you are set for life. I always tell my students, what I'm teaching you, you can use in 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade. You get to use this all the way through. Some of these techniques that we use, I've went over them with students who are in college, who are having to write papers. This is something that is a life skill. I know we're teaching it in 5th grade, but it will have you set for the rest of your career in school. And so if there's something you didn't understand, go back and watch it before you move on to the next step. We're going to go ahead and stop there for now.